This is the Volkswagen T Cross R-Line, a compact crossover from the people who have pretty much mastered this small family car. With a 1-litre, 3-cylinder turbocharged power unit, this T Cross makes 85 kW and 200 Nm of torque, while a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic gearbox mediates that power to the front wheels. This car is a little late to the crossover party, as Ford has already had a chance to refine their offering by the time this one hit the market. Is this a case of measure twice, cut once? Or is it too little, too late?
Hey guys, welcome back to the Shift RSA. As always, my name is Jean and today we're driving the Volkswagen T Cross. Like you would have heard in the intro and seen from the thumbnail, this is the Volkswagen T Cross. So I want to start with a quick distinction between crossovers, SUVs and hatchbacks. So this car is more a hatchback than it is an SUV because that's what crossover means. And I've actually heard journalists get this wrong, where they say that these are small SUVs, and it's not the case. So SUV means sport utility vehicle, which means it's built on the principles of being kind of utilitarian, where it's got some other kind of intended purpose as well, which is usually either off-roading or hauling things. So that's quite far removed from this car's identity, because this is more a hatchback on stilts than it is a utility vehicle. The most utilitarian use you'll get out of this is climbing pavements, but you really don't want to go off-roading. This is essentially a small hatchback on stilts. That's its classification. That's what it is. It's a crossover, and that's what crossover means. So as you've also heard in the intro, this car makes 85 kilowatts and 200 Newton meters of torque from a 1-litre 3-cylinder engine. And I enjoy reviewing cars that I'm hesitant or doubtful about, because sometimes I get proven wrong, sometimes I get proven right, and I'm vindicated in my opinion. I really want to see what this 1-litre 3-cylinder turbo does. I'm actually going to go from standstill. I'm not going to launch it. Funny enough, it doesn't do that. Some cars allow you to step on the brake and stand on the accelerator, but this one picks up immediately what you're trying to do and it just dies down. It almost feels like it brake boosts a bit and then it just goes, nope, I'm out. So I am on a decline, so to be fair, it's not going to be the most accurate representation, and I'm not timing it, but let's see what she does. Wow. My initial impression, it's not a lot. Let me use the shifters, let me do it in manual quickly. Mid-range I think is a bit better. Wow. Yeah, I think mid-range is a lot better. I think if you're banging it from a standstill and you kind of have to move the car from a stationary position, I think it does lack a little bit. But mid-range, if you're driving and you need to pass another car and you shift down once or twice, I think that's a lot better. I think that's a better place for this engine to perform when you're already on the move and you're just downshifting and you put your foot down. I think that's, to be fair, that's somewhere where I am surprised. It's more pokey than I thought it would be there, which is good. You're never going to get away from small displacement. Yes, we like to supplement it with a turbo, but you'll never get away from it. I think this car does a good enough job of disguising that lack of meatiness. And I think the torque is a thing that disguises that, because it helps you move along kind of effortlessly without really stretching out the engine. And I wouldn't I really think you're wasting your time here after 4,000 RPM. I think all it's going to do then is make a noise and, you know, struggle. I don't know how this engine will last over time. Maybe it's just because I'm a bit old school in my head, but I tend to think that very small displacement engines with forced induction, I don't know how they will do over time. I don't know how well the turbo will last, because I always feel like something's got to give. Something is taking a beating if you're going this small in terms of capacity. So I don't know how it will do over time, but in this test, as of right now, the power plant in here is fine. Personally though, if it was for myself or for my wife, I would probably get a bigger engine. And the 2021 or 2022, I'm not sure. I know those ones come in a 1.5 liter engine, which is probably the one I would opt for. So let's talk about the handling. The handling is very interesting in crossovers because they're not 4x4s or they're not off-road cars. They don't have that typical top-heavy feeling. So they don't feel, it doesn't feel like it's leaning when you're cornering necessarily. And it's not so soft or plush, and it doesn't have that much travel that, you know, you're kind of bouncing along all over the place. I like the fact that this has hatchback DNA because some of that does translate into driving feel. You do get quite a sharp steering response, and the car is responsive enough, like I said, especially for daily use. And here on this piece of road, which I typically like to bring more sporty cars on, it's still quite capable. I think, like I said, a lot of that hatchback DNA does still come through because it does feel stiff enough. It's not wobbly, it's not unstable, it's not unsettling. It's doing these bends at a reasonable speed with quite a moderate level of composure, and I think that's a good thing. So let's actually get onto the design, because the design is very important in a car that's mass produced. You have to be conservative enough that it appeals to a lot of people, but you also do want to be striking enough to set yourself apart from the competition. And I think Volkswagen have done a brilliant job of that, because they are typically more evolutionary in their design. They don't really go out of the box with new cars. They don't really go, you know, for the wow factor. They typically go for more natural evolution of a previous car. So, and I think they've done a stunning job of that in this car. It resembles a Polo enough that it's, you know, something you can recognize. But there's some design elements in here that are really striking to me, that are really worth mentioning. And the first thing I want to mention is the rear lights. I quite enjoy the rear lights. I think it looks quite cheeky. I don't know how well it's going to age, but I think it's quite an interesting way to do it. There's a lot of the light design that isn't light, if that makes sense. What I'm essentially saying is there's surrounding trimmings, there's a reflective bar that goes across the boot lid, which I also really like. I wish it wasn't reflective. I wish it was an actual light. But it's still, in terms of design and in terms of tying the two lights together on both ends, I think that's a very quirky and cool thing to do. The lights in the front also very much Polo and Golf. But I think the way that they've done the daylight running light, that little LED strip, I think it's quite beautiful and it's quite striking. You can see it from a distance. And then in terms of the lines and the body shape and all that, I mean, that's very conservative. There isn't much you can do with a crossover platform. Some people like Nissan have pushed it with a Juke and they've added some funky dimensions. But then again, those things don't age very well and it's not to everyone's liking. I think this car does a very Apple thing with their design, where it's minimalistic. It's clean lines usually, and they focus on the interface and the way you interact with the car. That refers to the digital dials over here and the lovely big touchscreen over here. And I say lovely because it really is. It's so simple. It's very user-friendly. And I think it's a very clean way of doing it. It's got such a premium feel to it. And you really feel like you're getting your money's worth, because you do pay quite a bit of money. This one comes in at about 380,000 Rand, the way that it's spec'd and all the bells and whistles that it has. Bells and whistles including the touchscreen, the GPS, wireless charging for your phone, this lovely digital display over here. You pay quite a premium, but then again they allow you to feel like you're getting something for your money, and you really do. Because this digital dial over here has some very neat features. You can go between all the views. You know, you can kind of, whatever you want to see, you can see your traveling information, your live information regarding the car's economy and all that. Unfortunately, like with the higher up Volkswagen models, you can't put the GPS screen over there, which is a bit of a bummer. That really would have been the cherry on top. other than that, you get so much more than you do with the normal dials. And it looks fancy. It's a real party piece. I bet if you go and show this car to your family and friends when you first buy it, because let's be honest, we all do that, that's definitely a neat thing to point out, and it's going to make them feel like their cars are outdated. It really makes you feel like you're in a premium product, because there are some other things in the car, unfortunately, that makes it feel like less of a premium product, and that would be plastics like this, almost all the way up the door. There's really no premium feeling material here, which I'm very surprised about, because when I take an Uber or a Bolt and I get in, and you know, it's usually a Nissan or a Toyota or a Kia, and they're usually the bottom spec ones, and that's kind of what I'm getting here, which is a bit disappointing, because your arm rests here, you might want to feel some cloth somewhere then. Luckily this is leather or plastic leather, but there's nothing here to feel premium other than this little bit of kind of pattern textured trim piece here by the door handle. But the cheap plastics are pretty much everywhere here. They didn't disguise it super well, and I'm sorry to say that, but little things like this I think distract you enough to take away from that, and the car never feels cheap when you're driving. I don't know if that makes sense. The car never really feels cheap when you're driving, because nothing's rattling unnecessarily. When you close the door, it still feels solid, and most of the things you touch and interact with feel solid enough, but only just. Luckily there's bells and whistles like that and that, and the parking sensors, you know, real creature comforts that distracts from that. So I think they've kind of had the budget to play with, and they've prioritized some things over other. I think if you did get nice expensive feeling trim, the price would go up on this car for sure. Another thing worth mentioning is the park distance control, because in this car it actually goes a step further and it stops the car for you if it thinks there's an obstruction. So if there's something you're not seeing and the parking sensors pick it up and you continue to move, the car will actually stop for you, which can actually be annoying, because in our country you've got parking attendants and they help you back out of parkings, and what's tricky about that is they stand very close to the car as they're helping you out, and if the car picks them up, it's going to stop, and you've got to open your window and say, "Excuse me sir, ma'am, can you please get out the way? The car won't move if you don't." In terms of space inside the car, I've noticed that I don't actually have that much room. So I've been able to lower the seat, so I've got a bit of headroom now. Not like a crazy amount, but I've got enough. And then I was surprised to find out that you actually can't move the seat back enough. So that's a problem for people like me, because I'm quite tall at about 6'4", 6'5". I don't have the ideal legging position for myself. I guess if you're going on averages of people's dimensions, I think your more averagely sized person will fit comfortably. One thing I'm glad to report, the steering wheel does actually have rake adjustments. So in other words, I'm able to move it more towards myself. It's also a preferential thing, but that's how I prefer to sit in a car. But you can have it nice and close to over here, or you can have it all the way back there, and then obviously up and down. The rear seats I think offer about as much legroom as a Polo would. Okay, so let's conclude then. The 2019-2020 Volkswagen T Cross 1-liter turbo automatic R-Line. I think this car is capable enough to fit into your lifestyle if you require a premium product, something with a lot of bells and whistles, that feels very good on the road, and that will get you from point A to B very comfortably. I think there are definitely people that will prefer this to the Ford EcoSport, and the other way around as well. So it really is quite subjective. It comes down to what you prefer. But for me, if it was my money, it's very likely to go to one of these, because I really enjoy the way it feels. I like the way I feel in here when I drive. I'm quite comfortable, and I know my passengers will be happy as well. Like I said, I don't know if I'll go for the 1-liter. I'll probably go for the bigger engine. It's simple enough to interact with everywhere. It's potent enough to drive, and I think it looks very good, and I really hope that the design stands a test of time as well, so that this car can also almost fill that void that the Polo did, where for many people it was their first or second car. They needed good value for money. They needed a product that would be reliable and enjoyable enough over time, and I think this definitely has the potential to do that. Has it sold me on crossovers? Maybe. I don't know if I would buy one still, but I would love to have one in the family. And I do think there's a certain novelty to driving a crossover because of the seating position and all that. So I think this is probably the car to sell me on crossovers. And I think I'm going to end the review on that, because I think this car has been everything that I expected to be, plus a little more. And the little more definitely comes down to the way the car feels when it drives, the nice high seating position, maybe because it's the R line, but all the nice little design elements inside the car that make it feel like a well-justified purchase. So I'm going to end the review on there, and I really hope that answers some of your questions. If you've got any other questions, please don't hesitate to comment or message, or contact me however you want to. Thanks again for watching, and please remember to like and subscribe. I always ask. That's it from me. Thank you guys. Thank you for watching as always, and until next time. And then guys, I always mention this, really take me up on the offer. If you've got t-shirts with your business brand on it and you'd like to advertise on the channel, obviously it's free of charge. I like to think of it as a way to give back to people, so you never know what kind of reach a video will get and what kind of audience it will reach. So if you want me to wear your t-shirt in one of my videos and give you a shout out, this one for example is from After Hours. The gentleman that provided this car for me to review is from After Hours. He's one of the organizers, and they're basically a big group of car enthusiasts that like to organize breakfast runs and events, and all of their events are killers. The cars that show up there, the people that show up, the variety is amazing in the Gauteng area. So they've taken advantage of the opportunity. You should too.